The auditorium erupted in applause as Madison Fletcher walked across the stage to accept the Outstanding Student Leadership Award, her golden hair catching the stage lights like a halo. She moved with the kind of confidence that seemed effortless, the same poise she had displayed when delivering the speech that had won her the state-level competition just 3 months earlier. I sat in the back row of the graduation ceremony, my hands folded tightly in my lap, watching 300 people celebrate Madison's achievement. The principal praised her exceptional writing ability and inspiring vision for student leadership. Teachers beamed with pride at their star pupil. Parents whispered to each other about what a remarkable young woman she was. None of them knew that every word of that award-winning speech had come from my laptop. Written during countless late nights in my bedroom while Madison was at parties I was never invited to. The Madison Fletcher Leadership Scholarship, Principal Harrison announced, recognizes not only academic excellence, but also the ability to inspire others through powerful communication and innovative thinking. More applause. More praise for Madison's natural talent and authentic voice. I felt a familiar knot forming in my stomach, the same mixture of pride and resentment that had been my constant companion since the day Madison first asked for my help. It had started innocently enough, back in sophomore year. Madison and I had been paired together for a history project, one of those random assignments where teachers try to force unlikely partnerships in the hope of building character or breaking down social barriers. Madison was already popular, then student council representative, varsity cheerleader, the kind of girl who seemed to float through high school on a cloud of effortless success. I was her opposite in every way that mattered at Jefferson High. Quiet, bookish, invisible to most of my classmates. I spent lunch periods in the library, ate dinner alone, while my parents worked late, and found my primary social interaction in online forums where nobody knew my real name. I'm terrible at writing, Madison had confessed during our first project meeting, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against the library table. Like, really terrible. Could you maybe help me with the essay portion? I had been flattered that someone like Madison would ask for my help with anything. Writing was the one area where I felt confident, where I could express ideas that seemed to matter. So I helped her craft an essay about the Industrial Revolution that earned us an A+ and a comment from Mrs. Peterson about Madison's sophisticated analysis and compelling prose. "You're amazing at this," Madison had said, her smile bright and grateful. I could never write like that. It should have been a one-time collaboration, but somehow it became a pattern. Madison would approach me before major assignments, her expression a perfect blend of helplessness and charm. "I know I'm asking a lot," she would say, "but you're just so much better at this than I am, and I'm so busy with student council and cheerleading and all my other commitments." At first, I told myself I was just helping a classmate, that this was what good people did for each other. But as the requests became more frequent and more significant, I began to understand that I wasn't helping Madison. I was enabling her to take credit for work she couldn't do herself. The speech that had won her the state leadership competition was supposed to be the culmination of her high school career. A 5-minute presentation on the future of student voice in educational reform. Madison had been selected to represent our school based on her previous speaking engagements, all of which had been built on words I had written. "This is really important," she had told me when she asked me to write the competition speech. Like, this could determine my entire future. There are college scouts at this thing, scholarship opportunities. I really need to nail this. I had spent 2 weeks researching educational policy, interviewing students about their experiences, crafting arguments about the need for authentic student representation in school governance. The speech I wrote was passionate, well-researched, and genuinely innovative in its approach to student advocacy. Madison had delivered it flawlessly, her natural charisma bringing my words to life in ways I never could have managed myself. She had won first place in the state competition, earning a full scholarship to the university of her choice and recognition as one of the most promising young leaders in the state. "I couldn't have done it without you," she had said afterward. But her gratitude felt hollow when she accepted interview requests from local newspapers and never mentioned my contribution. Now, watching her accept yet another award based on work I had done, I felt the weight of my own complicity in this deception. I had enabled Madison's success, but I had also enabled my own invisibility. Madison Fletcher represents the best of what student leadership can be, Principal Harrison continued. Her speech at the state competition demonstrated not only her commitment to educational reform, but also her ability to articulate complex ideas with clarity and passion. I thought about that speech, about the hours I had spent researching student voice initiatives in other states, about the interviews I had conducted with classmates who felt unheard in our school's decision-making processes. I had poured my own experiences of feeling invisible into that speech, had channeled my frustration with being overlooked into arguments for why student perspectives mattered. And Madison had delivered those arguments as if they were her own insights, her own passion, her own vision for change. The scholarship committee was particularly impressed, the principal added, by the authenticity of Madison's voice and her genuine understanding of the challenges facing today's students. Authenticity, the word hit me like a physical blow. There was nothing authentic about Madison's success, was built entirely on my work, my ideas, my understanding of what it meant to be a student who felt powerless in an institution that claimed to value student input. I looked around the auditorium at my classmates and their families, all of them celebrating Madison's achievement with genuine enthusiasm. They had no reason to suspect that the girl they were applauding had never written a significant piece of original work in her 4 years of high school. My parents sat a few rows ahead of me, politely applauding along with everyone else. They had no idea that their daughter, the quiet girl who spent most of her time reading and writing, had been the ghostwriter behind one of the most celebrated student speeches in the state's recent history. Madison will be attending Stanford University in the fall, Principal Harrison announced, where she plans to study political science and continue her advocacy for student rights. Stanford, the same university I had been rejected from, despite having better grades and test scores than Madison. The irony wasn't lost on me that my own words had helped secure her admission to a school that had deemed me unworthy of acceptance. As Madison stepped up to the microphone to give her acceptance speech, I felt a familiar dread. Would this be another piece I had written? Another set of my ideas delivered in her voice? "Thank you so much for this incredible honor," Madison began, and I recognized the opening line immediately. It was from the draft I had written for her just 2 days earlier, when she had texted me in a panic about needing to prepare remarks for the ceremony. Throughout my time at Jefferson High, she continued, "I've learned that true leadership isn't about having all the answers. It's about asking the right questions and creating space for others to share their voices." My words, my philosophy, my understanding of what leadership should be, born from years of feeling voiceless myself. I watched the audience hang on every word, watched teachers nod approvingly at Madison's wisdom, watched my classmates look at her with admiration and respect. And I realized that I had become complicit in my own erasure, that my desire to help had become a form of self-destruction. As Madison concluded her speech to thunderous applause, I made a decision that would change everything. It was time to stop hiding in the shadows of someone else's success. The pattern had become so routine that I barely questioned it anymore. Every few weeks, my phone would buzz with a text from Madison. "Emergency. Need your help with something. Can you meet me at the library?" I always said yes, even when I had my own assignments to complete. Even when I was exhausted from staying up late working on her previous request. Even when a small voice in my head whispered that this arrangement had become deeply unhealthy for both of us. The day after the graduation ceremony, I found myself in my bedroom, staring at my laptop screen and trying to understand how I had become so invisible in my own life. My desk was covered with research materials for Madison's college application essays, scholarship applications, and summer internship proposals, all projects that would advance her future while I remained stuck in the background. My phone buzzed, another text from Madison. "Oh my God, Emma, did you see the article in the paper about my speech?" They're calling it visionary. Thank you so much for your help. You're the best. I stared at the message, feeling a complex mixture of emotions I couldn't quite name. Pride that my work was being recognized, even if not attributed to me. Resentment that Madison was receiving credit for ideas she had never had. Confusion about why I continued to participate in this arrangement that left me feeling increasingly hollow. The newspaper article she referenced was spread across my desk. A full-page feature about local students' award-winning vision for educational reform. The reporter had interviewed Madison extensively, praising her innovative thinking and mature understanding of complex policy issues. Fletcher's speech demonstrated a sophisticated grasp of educational theory that impressed judges and educators alike, the article read. Her proposal for student-led governance committees showed both practical wisdom and idealistic vision, a rare combination in someone so young. Every word of praise was for work I had done, research I had conducted, ideas I had developed through my own experiences of feeling powerless in our school's rigid hierarchy. But reading about it in the newspaper, seeing Madison's photo accompanying quotes about her innovative proposals, made me feel like I was disappearing a little more each day. I thought back to how this arrangement had evolved over the years. How my initial willingness to help a classmate had gradually transformed into something that felt more like exploitation. It hadn't happened all at once. It had been a slow erosion of boundaries. Each request slightly larger than the last, each success making Madison more dependent on my assistance. Junior year had been the turning point. Madison had been elected student body president largely on the strength of a campaign platform I had written that focused on mental health resources and academic pressure. Her victory speech, which I had crafted to sound spontaneous and heartfelt, had brought several teachers to tears. "You should go into politics," Mrs. Chen had told Madison after the speech. "You have a gift for connecting with people's real concerns." Madison had beamed at the praise, never mentioning that every policy proposal in her platform had come from my research into student wellness, programs at other schools, or that her personal anecdotes about academic stress had been based on my own experiences with anxiety and perfectionism. That's when I began to understand the true cost of my guidance writing. I wasn't just helping Madison succeed, was giving away pieces of my own identity, my own insights, my own voice. The experiences that should have been shaping my college applications and scholarship essays were instead being used to build someone else's resume. "I don't know how you come up with this stuff," Madison had said after I handed her a speech about the importance of student mental health advocacy. "It's like you really understand what it's like to struggle." The irony was devastating. I did understand what it was like to struggle with anxiety, with feeling unheard, with the pressure to be perfect in a system that seemed designed to crush individual creativity. But instead of using those insights to build my own platform, my own voice, I was channeling them into Madison's public persona. The requests had become more frequent and more demanding as Madison's profile grew. Student council speeches, scholarship essays, college application materials, even social media posts that needed to sound authentic and relatable. I had become Madison's personal content creator, crafting every aspect of her public voice, while my own remained silent. "You're so much better at this than I am," she would say, and I had learned to recognize this as both flattery and manipulation. Madison wasn't stupid. She understood exactly what she was asking of me. And she knew exactly how to make me feel essential while keeping me invisible. The most painful part was watching my own opportunities slip away while Madison's multiplied. The scholarship I had been rejected for, the one that specifically looked for students with authentic voices and personal experiences with educational challenges, had gone to Madison. Based on an essay I had written about overcoming social anxiety and finding confidence through student leadership. I had poured my real experiences into that essay, had shared vulnerabilities I had never spoken about with anyone. Madison had submitted it as her own story, had interviewed with scholarship committees about her journey from shy outsider to confident leader. "The committee was really impressed by your honesty," the scholarship coordinator had told Madison. "It takes courage to write so openly about mental health struggles." Courage, the word had haunted me for weeks. It had taken courage for me to write about my anxiety, my feelings of inadequacy, my struggle to find my voice in a world that seemed designed for people like Madison. But I had given that courage away, had allowed someone else to claim credit for my vulnerability. My parents had noticed my increasing withdrawal, my reluctance to talk about school or my own college plans. "You seem stressed lately," my mother had said over dinner the week before graduation. "Is everything okay with your applications? You've been so secretive about the whole process." How could I explain that? I had been too busy writing other people's applications to focus on my own. How could I tell them that their daughter, who they believed was quiet but capable, had been systematically giving away her best work to someone who would never acknowledge her contribution? "I'm fine," I had said. The same response I gave to every expression of concern. Just tired. But I wasn't fine. I was disappearing, piece by piece, essay by essay, speech by speech. Every time Madison stood up to deliver words I had written, every time she received praise for insights I had developed, every time she advanced toward opportunities I had helped her secure, I felt myself becoming more invisible. The night after graduation, I sat in my room surrounded by acceptance letters from state schools and community colleges' respectable options, but nothing like the prestigious universities that were courting Madison based on work I had done. I thought about the essay I had written for her Stanford application, the one about finding her voice through student advocacy. I had written about the importance of authentic self-expression, about the courage it takes to speak truth to power, about the responsibility that comes with having a platform to influence others. Every word had been true, but none of it had been Madison's truth. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Madison. "Hey, I know you're probably busy with your own stuff, but I'm starting to think about my freshman year at Stanford. Do you think you could help me draft some ideas for my orientation speech? I want to make a good first impression." I stared at the message for a long time, my finger hovering over the keyboard. For 3 years, I had responded to these requests with immediate agreement, had dropped everything to help Madison maintain the illusion of her own brilliance. But something had shifted during the graduation ceremony, watching her accept award after award for work I had done. Something had broken when I heard the principal praise her authentic voice and original thinking. For the first time in 3 years, I typed a different response. "I can't help you with this one. I need to focus on my own writing now." I hit send before I could change my mind, then turned off my phone and opened a new document on my laptop. It was time to start writing my own story. Madison's response came within minutes. A series of increasingly frantic texts that I watched pile up on my silenced phone. "What do you mean you can't help? This is really important." Followed by, "Are you mad about something?" And finally, "Emma, please call me. I really need you." But for the first time in 3 years, I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I sat at my desk and tried to remember what it felt like to write for myself, to express my own thoughts without filtering them through Madison's persona. The blank document on my laptop screen felt both terrifying and liberating. I had become so accustomed to writing in Madison's voice, confident, charismatic, effortlessly articulate, I had almost forgotten what my own voice sounded like. I started with a simple sentence. "My name is Emma Chen, and I have been invisible for 3 years." The words appeared on the screen like a confession, and suddenly I couldn't stop writing. Everything I had suppressed, every resentment I had swallowed, every moment of self-doubt and frustration poured out in a stream of consciousness that felt like finally exhaling after holding my breath for years. I wrote about the first time Madison had asked for help. How flattered I had been that someone popular would value my abilities. I wrote about the gradual escalation of requests, the way my willingness to help had been transformed into an expectation of service. I wrote about watching my own opportunities disappear while Madison's multiplied. About the scholarship essays that contained my most personal experiences submitted under someone else's name. But most importantly, I wrote about the cost of my own silence, the way I had participated in my own erasure by choosing to remain in the shadows rather than claim credit for my work. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls from Madison and a string of texts that revealed a panic I had never seen from her before. "Emma, I don't understand what's happening. Are you okay? Did I do something wrong? I'm really freaking out about this Stanford thing. I need your help with the orientation speech. Please don't abandon me now. You know I can't do this without you." That last message stopped me cold. "You know I can't do this without you." It was the most honest thing Madison had ever said to me, an admission that her entire public persona was built on my work. I called her back and she answered on the first ring. "Emma, thank God, I was starting to think something terrible had happened to you." "Nothing terrible happened," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "I just realized that I need to start writing for myself instead of for you." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "What do you mean?" Madison asked, and I could hear genuine confusion in her voice, as if the idea that I might have my own ambitions was completely foreign to her. "I mean that I've spent 3 years writing your speeches, your essays, your college applications, and I have nothing to show for it. You're going to Stanford on a scholarship I helped you win, with a reputation built on work I did. And I'm going to community college because I never had time to focus on my own applications." "But Emma," Madison said, her voice taking on the pleading tone she used when she really needed something, "you're so much better at writing than I am. And I've always been grateful for your help. You know that." "Grateful isn't enough anymore," I said. "I need recognition. I need credit. I need to stop being your ghostwriter and start being my own author." Another silence, longer this time. "Are you saying you won't help me anymore?" Madison asked, and I could hear the panic creeping back into her voice. "I'm saying that if you want my help, things need to change. No more taking credit for work I do. No more pretending that my ideas are your insights. If I write something for you, my name goes on it too." "But Emma," Madison protested, "that would be weird. People expect these things to come from me. It would look strange if I suddenly started co-authoring everything." "Then maybe you should start learning to write your own material," I said. And the words felt like a revelation. "Maybe it's time for you to develop your own voice instead of borrowing mine." The conversation ended awkwardly, with Madison promising to think about what I had said and me knowing that she was probably already planning to find another ghostwriter to replace me, but I felt lighter than I had in years. For the first time since sophomore year, I was free to focus on my own work, my own voice, my own future. I spent the next week writing not for Madison, not for anyone else, but for myself. I wrote about the experience of being invisible, about the cost of enabling someone else's success at the expense of your own. I wrote about the difference between helping and being exploited, between collaboration and erasure. And then I did something I had never done before. I submitted my writing to the school newspaper. The editor, Jake Morrison, was a senior I barely knew, someone who existed in the same social sphere as Madison, but had always seemed more genuine, more interested in actual journalism than social status. "This is really powerful stuff," he said, when I met with him to discuss my submission. "But I have to ask her, you sure you want to publish this? It's pretty revealing about your relationship with Madison Fletcher." I thought about his question, about the potential consequences of going public with my story. Madison still had friends at school, still had influence and social capital that I lacked. Publishing this piece would essentially end any possibility of reconciliation between us, but it would also be the first time in 3 years that my name would appear on something I had written. "I'm sure," I said. The article was published in the final issue of the school newspaper, just 2 weeks after graduation. The headline read, "The Ghostwriter, a personal essay about finding your voice in someone else's shadow." The response was immediate and intense. Students who had graduated with us shared the article on social media, sparking conversations about academic integrity, friendship boundaries, and the pressure to succeed at any cost. Teachers reached out to express their shock and to apologize for not recognizing what had been happening. But the most meaningful response came from other students who had similar experiences, kids who had been doing homework for popular classmates, writing papers for athletes, or providing ideas that others took credit for. "I thought I was the only one," wrote one commenter. "Thank you for making me feel less alone." Madison's response was swift and defensive. She posted a lengthy statement on social media claiming that I had mischaracterized our relationship, that she had always been grateful for my assistance, and that my essay was a betrayal of trust that painted her in an unfair light. But her statement only reinforced the points I had made in my essay. She still couldn't acknowledge that what I had provided wasn't assistance, it was the foundation of her entire public persona. More importantly, her response revealed something I had suspected but never confirmed. She genuinely didn't understand that what she had been doing was wrong. In her mind, she had been the victim of my sudden betrayal, not the beneficiary of 3 years of unacknowledged labor. The article caught the attention of a journalism professor at the State University, who reached out to discuss my interest in pursuing communications as a major. She had been impressed not just by the writing itself, but by my willingness to tackle a difficult subject with honesty and nuance. "This kind of personal journalism takes real courage," she told me during our phone conversation. "You've managed to tell a story that's both deeply personal and broadly relevant. That's not an easy balance to strike, for the first time in 3 years." I was being praised for my own work, recognized for my own voice, valued for my own insights. "Have you considered transferring to our program?" she asked. "I think you'd find our journalism department very welcoming to students, with your kind of authentic perspective." As I hung up the phone, I realized that my decision to stop ghostwriting for Madison had done more than free me from an unhealthy relationship had opened up. Possibilities I had never imagined for myself. I was no longer the invisible girl who wrote other people's success stories. I was finally ready to write my own. The journalism professor's offer to transfer to the State University felt like a lifeline I hadn't known I needed. After years of watching Madison advance toward opportunities that should have been mine, the possibility of pursuing my own path in communications felt both thrilling and terrifying. But first, I had to deal with the aftermath of my published essay. The article had gone viral within our school community, shared and discussed across social media platforms with an intensity that surprised everyone, including me. Students, parents, and teachers were engaging in heated debates about academic integrity, the pressure to succeed, and the ethics of ghostwriting. Some responses were supportive, praising my courage in speaking out about an uncomfortable truth. Others were critical, suggesting that I was bitter about Madison's success and trying to tear down someone who had worked hard to achieve her goals. "Emma Chen is just jealous that Madison Fletcher is going to Stanford while she's stuck at community college," one comment read. "This whole essay is just sour grapes from someone who can't handle being second best." The criticism stung, but it also revealed how deeply misunderstood my situation was. People assumed that I was envious of Madison's success, when the truth was that I was frustrated by my own complicity in creating that success while remaining invisible. The most difficult response came from my parents, who had read the article with a mixture of pride and concern. "We had no idea this was happening," my mother said during a family dinner that felt more like an intervention. "Why didn't you tell us that you were writing Madison's assignments?" "Because I didn't think you'd understand," I said, pushing food around my plate without eating, "and because I wasn't sure it was wrong at first. I thought I was just helping a friend." "But sweetheart," my father said gently, "this went on for years. You must have realized that it wasn't fair to you." I tried to explain the gradual nature of the arrangement, how it had started with small favors and evolved into something much more significant. I tried to describe the way Madison's gratitude had made me feel valued, even as her success made me feel invisible. I think I was afraid that if I stopped helping her, I'd go back to being completely invisible, I admitted. At least when I was writing her speeches, I felt like my ideas mattered, even if no one knew they were mine. The conversation was painful but necessary. My parents helped me understand that my desire to be useful had been exploited, that my fear of invisibility had made me complicit in my own erasure. "You were never invisible to us," my mother said, tears in her eyes. We've always been proud of your writing, your intelligence, your kindness. We just didn't realize that you were giving all of those gifts away to someone else." The hardest conversation came when Madison finally called me, 3 days after the article was published. I had been expecting her call, but I still felt nervous when her name appeared on my phone screen. "Emma," she said, and her voice was different than I had ever heard it, smaller, less confident, almost vulnerable. "We need to talk." We met at the coffee shop near our school, a neutral location where we could speak privately without the risk of running into classmates. Madison looked different, too less polished, more uncertain, as if the persona she had carefully constructed was finally beginning to crack. "I read your article," she said, stirring her latte without drinking it. "And I've been thinking about what you said," and I prompted when she didn't continue. "And I think maybe you're right about some things," she admitted, though the words seemed to cause her physical pain. "I think maybe I did take advantage of your willingness to help." It was the closest thing to an apology I had ever received from Madison, but it still felt incomplete. "Madison," I said, "I need you to understand that this wasn't just about taking advantage. You built your entire reputation on work I did. You got into Stanford using essays I wrote about my experiences. You won scholarships based on ideas I developed. That's not just taking advantage, that's fraud." Madison flinched at the word fraud, and I could see her struggling to reconcile her self-image as a good person with the reality of what she had done. "I never meant for it to go that far," she said quietly. I was so busy with everything else, and you were so good at writing, and it seemed like you didn't mind helping. But I did mind," I said, feeling 3 years of suppressed frustration finally finding its voice. "I minded that you never acknowledged my contribution. I minded that you took credit for my most personal experiences. I minded that you advanced toward opportunities I wanted while I fell further behind." "So what do you want me to do now?" Madison asked, and I could hear desperation in her voice. "Do you want me to give up my scholarship? Do you want me to tell Stanford that I didn't write my own essays?" The question hung between us, and I realized that I didn't actually want Madison to destroy her future. What I wanted was recognition, acknowledgement, and the chance to build my own success instead of enabling someone else's. "I want you to learn to write your own material," I said. "I want you to develop your own voice instead of borrowing mine, and I want you to understand that what happened between us can't happen with anyone else." Madison nodded, though I could see the fear in her eyes at the prospect of succeeding without my support. "What about you?" she asked. "What are you going to do now?" I told her about the journalism professor's offer, about the possibility of transferring to a program that valued authentic voices and personal storytelling. I told her about the other students who had reached out after reading my essay, sharing their own experiences with academic exploitation and invisible labor. "I'm going to write my own story now," I said. "I'm going to use my voice to tell stories that matter, stories that might help other people who feel invisible or taken advantage of." As we prepared to leave the coffee shop, Madison made one final attempt to salvage our relationship. "Do you think we could still be friends?" she asked. After everything, I considered her question carefully. The girl sitting across from me was someone I had known for 3 years, someone I had helped achieve her dreams, even as I sacrificed my own. But she was also someone who had never truly seen me as an equal, who had valued my abilities while dismissing my autonomy. "I think we need to figure out who we are as individuals before we can figure out how to be friends," I said. "You need to learn who Madison Fletcher is when she's not performing words," I wrote. "And I need to learn who Emma Chen is when she's not hiding in someone else's shadow." Madison nodded, tears in her eyes, and I felt a complex mixture of sadness and relief. I was losing a relationship that had defined much of my high school experience, but I was also gaining something more valuable, the chance to define myself. As I walked home from the coffee shop, I thought about the journalism professor's words about authentic perspective and personal courage. For 3 years, I had been afraid that my own voice wasn't interesting enough, compelling enough, valuable enough to stand on its own. But my essay about ghostwriting had proven that my experiences, my insights, my voice did matter. The response from readers had shown me that authenticity was more powerful than performance. That truth was more compelling than carefully crafted fiction. I pulled out my phone and called the journalism professor. "I've been thinking about your offer," I said when she answered. "I'd like to know more about transferring to your program." "I'm so glad to hear that," she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "I think you're going to find that journalism is the perfect place for someone who understands the power of giving voice to the voiceless." As I hung up the phone, I realized that she was right. I had spent 3 years giving voice to Madison's ambitions while silencing my own. Now it was time to use my voice to tell the stories that needed to be told, to shine light on the experiences that too often remained in the shadows. I was no longer the invisible girl who wrote other people's success stories. I was finally ready to become the journalist who would make sure no one else had to remain invisible. 6 months later, I was sitting in a journalism classroom at the State University, surrounded by students who had chosen to pursue truth-telling as a career. The transfer had been easier than I expected. My published essay had served as a compelling writing sample, and my story of finding my voice had resonated with admissions counselors who valued authentic perspectives. Today, we're going to discuss the ethics of attribution, Professor Martinez announced, and I felt a familiar flutter of recognition. Who can tell me why it's important for journalists to properly credit their sources? Hands shot up around the classroom, students eager to demonstrate their understanding of basic journalistic principles. But I found myself thinking about a different kind of attribution, the kind that happens in the shadows, where ideas are borrowed and voices are silenced, not through malicious intent, but through willful blindness. "Emma," Professor Martinez said, noticing my thoughtful expression, "what's your take on this?" "I think attribution is about more than just avoiding plagiarism," I said, my voice steady and confident in a way it had never been in high school. "It's about recognizing that every idea, every insight, every story comes from someone's lived experience. When we fail to credit sources properly, we're not just breaking rules, we're erasing people." The professor nodded approvingly, and I could see other students considering my words with genuine interest. This was what I had been missing during my years of ghostwriting, the opportunity to engage with ideas openly, to contribute to conversations where my voice was valued and acknowledged. My phone buzzed with a text message, and I glanced down to see Madison's name on the screen. We had maintained sporadic contact since our conversation at the coffee shop. But our interactions were different, now more honest, less dependent, tinged with the awkwardness of two people trying to redefine a relationship that had been fundamentally unequal. "Saw your article in the campus paper," her message read, "really proud of you for finding your voice." The article she referenced was a piece I had written about first-generation college students and the unique challenges they faced in navigating academic environments. It had been published in the university newspaper and picked up by several other college publications, earning me recognition as an emerging voice in student journalism. More importantly, it had been entirely my own work, my research, my interviews, my insights, my byline. "Thanks," I texted back. "How are things at Stanford?" "Harder than I expected," she replied. "Turns out I actually do need to learn how to write my own papers." "Who knew?" I smiled at her response, recognizing both the humor and the genuine struggle in her words. Madison was learning what I had always known, that authentic success required authentic effort, that borrowed brilliance was ultimately unsustainable. "You'll figure it out," I wrote back. "You're smarter than you gave yourself credit for." It was true. Madison had always been intelligent, charismatic, and capable. Her problem hadn't been lack of ability, had been lack of confidence in her own voice, combined with a system that rewarded performance over authenticity. After class, I walked across campus to my work-study job at the university's writing center, where I tutored students who were struggling with academic writing. It was ironic that I was now being paid to help people improve their own writing rather than doing their writing for them. "I just don't know how to make my essay sound more interesting," said Jake, a freshman who was working on a personal statement for a scholarship application. Everything I write sounds boring compared to what other people submit. I recognized the insecurity in his voice, the same fear of inadequacy that had made me willing to give away my own work for years. The most interesting essays aren't the ones that try to sound impressive, I told him. They're the ones that tell the truth about experiences that matter to the writer. What's something you've learned about yourself that you think other people might not understand? As Jake began to open up about his experience as a first-generation college student from a rural community, I saw his writing come alive with authenticity and passion. He wasn't trying to sound like someone else anymore. He was finding his own voice. "This is so much better," he said as we worked through his draft. "It actually sounds like me now." "That's the point," I said. "The best writing always sounds like the person who wrote it." That evening, I returned to my dorm room and opened my laptop to work on my latest assignment, a feature story about student activism on campus. As I typed, I thought about how different my life had become since I stopped writing for Madison and started writing for myself. I was no longer invisible. My professors knew my name, my classmates sought out my perspectives, and my writing was being published and discussed. But more importantly, I had learned to value my own voice, to trust my own insights, to believe that my experiences and observations were worth sharing. My phone rang, interrupting my writing. It was my mother, calling for our weekly check-in. "How are classes going, sweetheart?" she asked. "Really well," I said, and I meant it. "I'm working on a story about student protesters who are pushing for more mental health resources on campus. It's exactly the kind of journalism I want to be doing." "I'm so proud of you," she said, and I could hear the emotion in her voice. "Not just because you're doing well in school, but because you found the courage to speak up for yourself." That took real strength. As we talked, I thought about the girl I had been just a year ago, invisible, voiceless, content to live in someone else's shadow. That girl had been afraid that her own thoughts weren't interesting enough, her own experiences weren't valuable enough, her own voice wasn't strong enough to stand on its own. But she had been wrong about all of those things. After hanging up with my mother, I returned to my article about student activism. As I wrote about young people finding the courage to speak truth to power, to demand changes that would benefit future students, I realized that I was writing about myself as much as my interview subjects. I had learned to be an activist for my own voice, to demand recognition for my own work, to refuse to remain invisible in my own life. The girl who had once watched Madison accept awards for speeches she had written was gone. In her place was a young woman who understood that authentic success could only come from authentic effort, that borrowed brilliance was ultimately hollow, and that the most powerful voice anyone could develop was their own. I finished my article and submitted it to the campus newspaper, my byline appearing at the top like a small declaration of independence. Emma Chen, student journalist, truth teller, no longer invisible. The most powerful stories are the ones we finally find the courage to tell in our own voice with our own name attached.